This one little boy went up to him, "هو أنت بابا يسوع?" And we just told him, he looks like him, he looks like him, off you go. The story about the 21 martyrs became their own. I remember one donation, I'll never forget it. It was a gold ring. "Whatever I have is yours, O Lord. You have given me all this, and everything that I have belongs to you. The poor man is only indebted to you for a piece of bread, but you are indebted to him for your salvation. With you or without you, the Lord will bless his people." If you want to serve God, you find ways to serve him however you want. Even if you want to pay directly, don't want to do it through a charity, no problem. But the important thing is, what are you giving to God? What are you giving to Christ? So do it in any way that you want, but you got to do it.
So I've read online, Coptic Orphans, you go to Egypt, I think it's 1988, on a trip. You can't believe what your eyes see. You say you want to do something about it. How does that thought, I want to do something about it, become something that lasts until today, 36 years later, and thousands and thousands of people served?
Great question. It's the desire to do something for God. And what's beautiful is when you have that desire, God doesn't exactly show you everything that it needs to be, several steps ahead, or that you even have a plan or a vision. None of that. It was the idea of, here are some girls that I met in an orphanage and I want to help. And so the best way I know how to do it is collect money back in the States and send it to them. And God then guides and leads and opens doors. And the idea is you're persistent, you're consistent, you're constant at it. And that's how it grows. 36 years later, the 45 children have now turned into 86,000 children.
Wow. So let's just talk about the first few years. So you're sending money. Are you sending it like directly to the families?
Exactly.
Okay. And where are you getting this money from?
Friends and families. That was it.
You're just telling friends, hey, I want to send some money.
Yeah.
Everybody's giving you a little money.
Yeah.
And you're sending it. This is like as direct as it gets.
Yeah.
Okay. How does it get bigger? Like, how does it get bigger than that? Well, because a lot of people do this.
Yeah.
And it's just one person, two persons. That's all they do for the rest of their lives. But I know people want to grow things. And this isn't business. This isn't the private sector. This isn't charity. People want to scale things, but, they don't know how. So I really would like to just get into a little bit of the weeds of like, just how did it happen? Like, so what happened next? Like,
God then sends Tante Georgette and says, and she says to me, "Nermien, why don't you make it tax exempt? So at least we get some benefit." I go, no, Tante, I don't need to. We're just sending money. It doesn't need to be tax exempt. She goes, "But, at least they'll get some benefit or whatever." Okay. Oh, okay. So I started researching, how do I get tax exempt? They said, well, you have to have a constitution. How do I have a constitution? Well, you have to have a board. Then you have bylaws, then you have this, then you have that. And it actually took me 2 years before I finally got that act together and before becoming tax exempt. So started 1 year, and then several years later, then it became tax exempt. And so then it kind of hit me and said, well, if I'm already tax exempt, let me let others know about it, because maybe they'd be interested. And sure enough, God sent more money than was needed for that orphanage. So it forced us to go back to Egypt and look for more need. Okay. And the more need that we found, and of course what we discovered was that children outside of orphanages were worse off and needed more help. And so when we started through the servants of the church having access to more children, then we said, now we want more, we want to tell people, and sure enough, people were donating, and it just kept growing.
Okay.
Like a vicious positive cycle.
Yeah. You seem, I'm going to assume just anyone who's committed to something for this long in their life, it must mean something really special to you. Usually people who are like that are not really the best at letting responsibilities go and delegating. Who are some of the first people you brought in more formally, and are you still like kind of involved in the day to day of everything? Like how's your relationship with the organization now?
I think one of the most important thing, and you always have the, they call it the founder's syndrome,
Hmm.
and you learn from that. And the most important thing is that Coptic Orphans lasts 50 years and 100 years. So what does it take to make sure that it lasts 50 and 100 years? And of course, you could look at all the management theories. One of them, Built to Last by Jim Collins, kind of outlines why do
Hmm.
some organizations last that long and others don't. And the crux of it is the culture. What is the culture that you're preserving within the organization? And then every person that you bring onto the organization also has that same culture. So you don't have a problem delegating. You don't have a problem relinquishing
Yeah.
responsibilities because you have people who own it and who care about it and are just as passionate
Yeah.
as you are. And as a matter of fact, you have staff members where I'm telling them, please, you stay home. It's not safe in Egypt at this moment. For example, during the revolution,
Hmm.
it's not safe. You need to stay home. They go, no, how can I stay home? I need to take care of the kids. I need to make sure the kids are fine.
Yeah.
Lovely way.
So is that the culture that you're developing there? Like
Oh,
it's a everyone's kind of has a stake in the
absolutely.
mission.
A culture of passion, of resilience, of doing this to glorify God. First and foremost,
Hmm.
I often say that God and I have an agreement that I tell him the day that Coptic Orphans ceases to glorify you, please close it. There's
Hmm.
no need for it. Because what are we doing? Are we helping children? God can help the children a whole lot better than we can. Are
Right.
we saving Egypt? No. God could do it much better. So what is our role in this service? It's to glorify God.
And how do you measure that if the service is glorifying God? Like how do you know we are doing what God's called us to do?
It's when others are transformed, when others look upon us and are astounded by what we do and how we do it, and they themselves then say, "Wow, God, this I could see you in this."
Mm,
That they see God in what we do.
yeah. Along the way, did you ever come across trials or tribulations where you felt, this is God is rerouting us, or this is not going as planned, or tell me about some of those like kind of turning points in the organization where you kind of faced obstacles or
You'll always face
yeah.
obstacles. And the good thing, as Gandhi says, whenever you're doing something of meaning, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
Mm,
So it's wonderful. Whenever I see someone who's at the fighting part, I say, great, you've reached the third level, one more to go. There's always been challenges, but I think that you sense God's presence more during those times. Um, for example, um, there was a time in Egypt right after the revolution when the government was looking at all the NGOs that are operating in Egypt and kind of bringing them in for questioning, right? This was a very dangerous time for NGOs. And and it was the time that you had to rely on God the most to say that, God, you started this, you're going to continue it. I mean, we're talking about there are some NGOs that got jail sentences,
when
5 year,
was this?
right after the revolution, 2012.
The first revolution?
Yeah, 2020, yeah, so it was in the period of 2012. And if you look up some of the newspapers, you'll see the challenges that NGOs were facing. Um, so
To
it
test
was
their loyalty to Egypt, or what were they
exactly,
testing
there was
exactly?
questions about were there hidden agendas, what
Uh,
were they doing? They were foreign international
Got it.
organizations
Like maybe they were
for whatever, yeah,
operations by other governments,
yeah,
things like that.
but yani, by God's grace, we got through it. I'll have to tell you one small thing. So during the questioning, it's very intense.
Were you questioned?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
of course.
by who?
By the government.
Yeah, I know, but like, by who? What?
It was officials
Officials.
in the
What?
government. And of course, the most terrifying thing is you don't want to get anybody in trouble, right? You don't want to get your staff in trouble. You don't want to get anybody in
Yeah.
Egypt in trouble. And so the knees, in the cartoons, the knees, when you're fearful, they clunk together, on the sides.
Sweating.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, the knees don't go like this. The knees actually shake this way,
You
So
found out?
yeah, exactly. And I want to tell
Uh-huh.
you something. The only way to calm the knees down was the Jesus prayer.
Wow.
My Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy upon me, a sinner. You say it over and over and over. And whatever anxiety that you have, or fear that you have, or worry that you have, it calms down.
Yeah. And so what was the conclusion of that?
A clean slate of health, and soon after we became registered, and
Okay.
everything was set.
What is the process in Egypt? I mean, is everything formal there as well as if you were like a registered nonprofit here? Or is it
It was
you're
more,
kind of operating wild west over there?
it was more difficult. It took longer, but eventually, again, by the grace of God, everything is set and settled.
For people who don't know, I think in America, we don't have orphanages here in America, right? It's a foster care system. Does that exist in Egypt? Foster care? Or
Actually, it's a new system that they're trying to incorporate, because they realize that children shouldn't be institutionalized and shouldn't have to be raised in orphanages. And one of the good things that Coptic Orphans does is prevents poor children from having to go to orphanages. So we support them in their homes with the remaining family member.
okay.
Most of our children, their father has passed away. And once the father passes away, there's no income, there's no guidance. And the mother typically is not literate, maybe may not be educated, and is not an income provider. So it becomes very difficult for the children, oftentimes become laborers and maybe child brides and such. So Coptic Orphans actually prevents that from happening and ensures that they continue on to continuing in their schooling, and continue on to university and graduate and help others.
Yeah. So what is the mix? Are you supporting some kids that are in orphanages and some, or is it everyone that's completely just fatherless?
Correct.
Their mother might still be in their life.
Correct.
But
Correct.
and have you found that that's better for the child as opposed to being in an orphan?
Absolutely. 100.
When did that shift happen in your organization?
At the very beginning, very early on, is we found that children outside of orphanages are in greater need. So how do we reach them? How do I get to them? It's through the church servants. So the church servants, they know who's around in this village, and the church servant in this village, they know who has lost their father, who is in need and struggling. And so through them that we reach all our thousands of children.
I mean, how many kids are you supporting like today, right now?
Today, 18,000.
18,000, wow. And what's the age range of the...
Whenever the father dies, till they graduate university.
What if they don't go to school?
Oh, then they wouldn't be in our program.
They're no longer qualified?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
But it's not your school. They go to other schools?
Correct.
Okay.
Government schools. The
Government schools. Okay. So what is that age usually, like 18?
When they graduate university?
Yeah.
21.
21. Wow. So it could be for like 15 years.
Exactly.
Long time.
Yeah.
Great. I want to shift real quick and talk about... I didn't really understand the connection between Coptic Orphans and this 21 Martyrs with Jonathan Roumie. I think everyone's seen the animated movie, which was amazing. But, in his little promo video, he says, I'm here at Coptic Orphans and all that stuff. Yeah. How did that relationship start, and what is Coptic Orphans' connection with the movie?
Yeah, okay. Very interesting how God works. So, as you know, Jonathan Roumie is executive producer on that film. And we've been in touch with the people who made that film. And they actually started 6 years ago. It took 6 years for that film to come out. So the film producers wanted to first screen the film in Egypt. To whom? To the families of the martyrs in El Our, in Samalot. So they reached out to us saying, can you facilitate this for us? And of course, because we are taking care of the children of the martyrs, because they are also fatherless children, right? And we've been serving actually in that village some 15 years prior to the martyrdom. So we've been there for a very long time. So it's only natural that we added them into our program as soon as they became fatherless. So they reached out to us, the producers of the film reached out to us and said, you know, we'd like to come and we'd like to screen the film for the families. Can you help us? We said, absolutely. We took them. There was a delegation trip. Jonathan Roumie was also there with us. And I have to tell you a cute story. When Jonathan Roumie was there, people did notice him and they began to recognize him. And this one little boy went up to him, "Huwanta Baba Yasua." And we just told him, he looks like him. He looks like him. Off you go. But I want to tell you that how much Jonathan and the other members of the delegation, Mark Rogers and others that were on this delegation trip, were moved by the extraordinary faith of the Copts. And the wives, what they say about, you know, this kind of forgiveness. And, you know, they asked one wife, what would you say to the man who decapitated your husband? And she said, I would fall on my face and kiss his feet for the great honor that he bestowed on my husband, that he was, I mean, because of him was bestowed on my husband. Exactly. And so it was Jonathan Roumie and the others seeing a profound faith that maybe they haven't seen before. And because of that, the story about the 21 martyrs became their own. It became what they want the whole world to see and their whole world to hear.
Yeah. And those children of the martyrs, where are they now? Are they're older now? And
well, actually, they're still in our program, so we're still supporting them.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
we're still supporting. And when it comes to crisis like these things that would happen, that a lot of money comes in, but after a while it dies away, and they are left without the care that they need. We stepped in for more the mentoring, the helping with the trauma. Losing a father is not easy for any child. And so that we walk that journey with them for the sake of showing them that there's someone there with them day after day after day.
How do you fill that void? It's almost like especially if you have a good father. How do you fill the void of losing a good father in these kids' lives? Money helps, of course, education helps, empower them, but I mean, how is that ever replaced?
You can never replace a father. You can never replace a father. But what you can do is that have that one caring adult that's there and asking. So how we as Coptic Orphans do this is that the volunteer rep, the servant that is taking care of this family, is required to visit them at least twice a month. Go, knock on the door, sit down. How are you doing? How are things going? And every other week they would go and they would check on them for years and years and years. And so that gives the family a sense of stability, a sense of comfort, you know, and this is the emotional support that we're able to support, to provide.
What about the mothers? What role do the mothers play in all of this? Are they, I mean, in America, I mean, what would happen is the mothers basically become the mother and father. They go get a job, they work harder, they do the homework, they take them to soccer practice. You know, there's a lot of single mothers in America. Is it just that they can't do that in Egypt? Like even if they wanted to, they're incapable of it? Or
Correct. Think about it. You might have gotten a 4th grade education. And then say maybe even sixth grade education. So you may be able to read. Although your father and mother are farmers and you work in the field as well, soon you're getting married and your husband is the one taking care of the money, he's bringing in the money, he's bringing in everything. And then one day he's gone. You have no job. You've never worked a job. You've never earned money. You don't know what the world is like. You're still quite young. I mean, these widows are some very young. And suddenly you are left with, as one woman said, God took my husband and left me with 4 kids and 5 pounds, 5 Egyptian pounds. and that's what she was left with, yes. And so, again, the mother herself needs a lot of support and a lot of trauma and a lot of trauma healing. And we work with them. But we've gotten them to the point where they make their own decisions. Each mother, and we have 9,600 mothers in our program. Each mother has learned financial literacy. She knows budgeting. She even has a bank account and has her own ATM card so she could stand and get her own money, what we transfer to her, but in a most dignified manner.
Right. So I've had people go to Egypt from America, and they kind of bemoan the fact that they go to these, lower socioeconomic areas, these villages, and these people have like 6 kids, 7 kids, and they don't have enough money to feed these kids. Is that a problem you see? Do you look at it as a problem? What do you say to those people who see these families? They're like, why do you keep having kids? You can't afford to have kids. Why are you having more kids?
Well, Coptic Orphans doesn't have that problem because none of our mothers have kids anymore. Well, the fathers have passed away, so we don't. But I mean that bigger problem. You have to understand the environment. You have to understand the social pressures. It's easy for us to judge, but I think it's important to understand the environmental and what societal norms are there. But one of the things that Coptic Orphans is doing is looking to change mindsets, to change behaviors. So, like what? We train the mothers about physical abuse, protection from physical abuse, and teaching her that there are other ways of disciplining than beating or hitting or, other violent means.
Right.
And to begin to change her mindset, and likewise to change the mindset of the young girl in the very south of Egypt, where she's not, in her mind, I'm just going to get married. But actually, you can go on to university, you can continue, and to slowly change mindsets.
Oh boy, that's probably not taken too well in those cultures.
But we find our ways to do it. We find ways to do it.
Okay. I'm just going to look to your team. Nobody's signaling me, so we're going to keep going. So many things I want to talk to you about. Just so everyone knows, the different programs that Coptic Orphans offers, can you just outline those just really briefly for people that want to get involved?
That people want to get involved.
Yeah, for people who want to get involved.
The most important thing to do is to sponsor a child. Choose a boy, choose a girl, but you've got to sponsor a child. And what that means, the sponsorship, is that you get to know a particular child in Egypt, and for a minimum of 100 per month, you get to know one child that you could write letters to and visit while going to Egypt. Whenever you're in Egypt, we arrange all the visits. And it's a beautiful relationship that where the child cherishes it as well as you. So that's the first thing. Sponsor a child. The second thing is you as a young person, anywhere between the age of 18 to 23, can apply to go on a trip that's called the 21. So, of course, it's named the 21 in honor of the 21 Martyrs. And that happens every June and July to go and serve for 3 weeks by teaching English. But it's more than just serving and teaching English. It's learning about your heritage, you as a young person from the United States or Canada or Australia get to experience the faith that we had talked about. You get to visit with the families, and basically you come back understanding the Copts more and the roots of your faith.
Yeah.
So that's the second. What else you can do if you want to get involved is go on our website and make a donation.
Do you guys collaborate with other organizations in Egypt, like, or do you guys just operate as Coptic Orphans,
Absolutely.
or what does that look like?
So our biggest program, the Not Alone program for the fatherless children, cannot be done without collaboration with the 66 dioceses of Egypt. So in every location, we're coordinating with the church. Where are the villages that need to be served? Who will be the ones serving? And so it's a beautiful partnership. And His Holiness Pope Tawadros, he's very kind when he says in the videos and such, and he says that, you know, أنا خدمت معاهم when I was in Beheira and King Mayrut, and that I served with Coptic Orphans. He says, which is very kind of him. But basically, we've been working in his diocese prior to him becoming Pope for 15 years when he was there as assistant to Bishop Pachomius. So it's a beautiful relationship, and the church has been amazing, astounding in what it does for its people, and how it does it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. What about here? How do you work with you're based out of DC,
We're
right?
in DC.
How do you work with the local diocese and churches here to support the ministry abroad? What does that look like?
We promote our work to everyone, and through whether it's social media, whether it's throughout all the states, and actually in countries as well, Canada and Australia and England, where we have offices, that we promote the work, and wonderful people and very generous people come and support. And I always say the Copts are the best people in the world. They're the most generous. No, it's true.
Yeah,
No,
really.
this is true. The
Yeah.
Copts are the best people in the world, and how giving they are, how much they care for their people. I remember we once had a huge event, and we had passed envelopes around, and people put their donations and such. I remember one donation. I'll never forget it. It was a gold ring that came from Egypt. The person who donated it didn't have money to give, but she took something off of her body to give to a child or to give for the children. This is what the Copts are all about.
Yeah. No, the Copts are very generous. But do you think part of it is like a little bit of guilt? Like, we're here in America living like a really lavish, luxurious life compared to, you know, the people I'm sharing the program. And it's like, how could you say no? It's like how could you say no? Like, if you asked me right now, I'd have to say yes.
Oh, you're going to sponsor
I
a child,
will
boy or girl?
both.
Great. All right.
Um,
Sign them up. Good. No, on the contrary, I think there's an element that the Copts have that's really beautiful, and you see this a lot, is whatever I have is yours, O Lord. You have given me all this, and everything that I have belongs to you. So what happens when someone donates and we say, thank you so much? Why do you thank me? This is not mine. This is God's. I give from what he has given me. Why do you thank me? It's beautiful. It's a way of life, and it's quite unique.
Yeah. But, we have so much that I feel like it shouldn't be a struggle to support anybody who needs in Egypt, just from America alone. So, like, why is it, why is it Like, is there just too many charities or people not donating? Like, really, I know people are generous, but I also think people are not generous. I mean, not to be pessimistic, but I think people barely donate to their own churches. They barely donate to organizations. They might do it as a one-off, you know, but I do think I think maybe I'm just projecting here, but I think we're like kind of a greedy culture, actually. In America, I'm not talking about cops, I'm just saying the American culture. And it's very skeptical of charitable organizations. Like if I'm checking out of a cash register, it says, "Do you want to round up?" I never round up. I'm never going to round up, even after this conversation. But, um, why do you think the skepticism about charitable organizations, and why do you think like
I think people don't understand. Don't understand. I mean, if our Lord Jesus Christ says to give, he uses the Good Samaritan as an example. When the man says, "How do I attain everlasting life?" That was the answer to how do I attain everlasting life, is to go and do likewise, as the Good Samaritan has done. And so Saint John Chrysostom says something really beautiful. He says, and so basically, with go and do likewise, this is how you attain your salvation. So Saint John Chrysostom says this. He says, "The poor man is only indebted to you for a piece of bread, but you are indebted to him for your salvation." Are you saying, "Oh Lord, that when I give to the poor, I'm attaining my salvation?" Yes. So the service we're doing is we're serving you, the rich man, to get your salvation and not the poor, because God can take care of all the poor. There's nothing we're doing that God can't do better.
So why doesn't he?
Because he allows us to participate in having salvation, in having compassion, just as he says about the Good Samaritan, is he who had compassion on him. That's what God is asking of us. But it's an opportunity to serve with the Lord, to have compassion as Christ had compassion. So it's not for the poor, it's for us.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I've heard a lot of talk recently about, because you know what's going on in America, where Doge is getting involved in cutting a lot of funding from NGOs and just a lot of stuff in general.
Yes.
And a lot of people support things like that, like just because I think everyone believes I can spend money better than some organization can spend money. So for someone who thinks that, I can probably sponsor a family directly and serve them better directly, as opposed to Coptic Orphans or, Japanese orphans or whatever. Is that a wrong mindset? Like, what do you say to a person who has a mindset like that?
Just as Mordecai said to Esther, "With you or without you, the Lord will bless his people." So you're not as important as you think.
Yeah.
Yes. The reality, and we have to understand that. And the point is, if you want to serve God, you find ways to serve him however you want. Even if you want to pay directly, don't want to do it through a charity, no problem. But the important thing is, what are you giving to God? What are you giving to Christ? So do it in any way that you want, but you got to do it.
Yeah. What kind of goals do you have for Coptic Orphans? You said you want to see it 50 years be an organization, 100 years past you.
Yes.
How do you get there? What do you see? What do you see the future of Coptic Orphans being?
That every Coptic child in Egypt has been released from poverty. This is number one. Number two, that every single youth living abroad has a connection and a strong tie with the church in Egypt. And number three, that we as Copts in Egypt are well respected. Those three things.
Okay. That's like 30 minutes?
Okay.
Is that 30 minutes? I could keep going, but I'm trying to respect your time.
No. We're done.
That
Thank
was so
you.
fun. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
awesome. Hope you had fun.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate the.
So are you gonna sponsor a child?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
need
I
to.
will, yeah.
He said a boy and a girl.